My name is Julia Strife, and I'm a Communications Advisor here at RPRA, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. In this webinar, we'll discuss RPRA's role, outline our fee-setting process, and guide you through the proposal for the TIRES program. To ask a question, click on the Q&A tab, type your question, and hit send. Just so you know that all attendees can see your questions, and you can upvote the question to move it higher on the list at any time. Throughout the presentation, we'll stop at certain slides to address your questions. We'll try to answer questions that relate to the section we're covering at that time. If your question isn't answered right away, it may be because we plan to address it later in the presentation. If we don't get to your question, or if it's about your own certain situation, please email us at consultations@rpra.ca. This webinar is now being recorded, and both the recording and presentation slides will be posted on our website later today. Now I'll pass it over to Cam to begin today's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Welcome everyone who's joining us today. My name is Cameron Parrack. I'm Director of Programs and Stakeholder Relations at the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority. Also joining me to support this presentation is Stacey Bowman, our Manager of Data Analytics, Policy and Research, as well as Zoe Barlas, our Policy Analyst on the team. In the background, Zoe and Julia are going to be capturing all of your comments and questions and helping answer them either by typing out answers or helping to prepare Stacey and I to answer your questions. So please don't hesitate. If you have questions, you can type them into the Q&A function. Now, just acknowledging up front that for some people, this is this is an annual occurrence, and you may be familiar with RPRA and how we set our fees. But we have this year tried to enhance our presentation materials, our consultation materials, to help folks better understand how we set our fees, what your fees pay for, and a better understanding of any changes year over year. And also acknowledging that there are lots of folks who are new to EPR and to supporting your business and fulfilling your compliance obligations. So always, setting that baseline level of knowledge to start with. So let's go to the next slide and talk about who RPRA is for those that are new to us. The Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority is the regulator mandated by the Ontario government. So government empowers us, writes policy, and we enforce the regulations. So we support the transition to the circular economy while winding up the legacy waste diversion programs under the Waste Diversion Transition Act, or sometimes referred to as the WDTA. So those are our legacy programs operated by industry-funded organizations that we've been slowly transitioning over the past 5 years from the WDTA to the new framework, which is the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act, or RCEA. We also have a mandate to deliver digital reporting services on behalf of the Ontario government, specifically our Access Soul program and our hazardous waste program. Both are registries to help businesses with their compliance obligations under the Environmental Protection Act. Both of these expanded mandates were as directed by the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And as an administrative authority of the Government of Ontario, we do not receive any government funding. We fund our operations completely through fees charged to the regulated parties. So in short, we're a cost recovery organization, and those costs help us, or those fees that we charge to our regulated parties help us to deliver our mandate. Next slide, please. So just to set some scope for what we're consulting on today, this is a proposal specific to the TIRE program fees. We launched our consultation a few weeks ago, and the main proposal covers all programs. But for this consultation webinar today, we're going to focus just on TIRES. The fees are being proposed in advance of the calendar year, which they'll apply. So what we're consulting on are next year's fees. We're hoping to be able to finalize, once the consultation is wrapped up and we make recommendations to our board. We're targeting a finalization date of December 1st to give us that 30-day period in advance of them taking effect so that we can have fees be in effect January 1st, 2025. Now, RPRA's 2025 budget, on which all of our RPRA program fees are based, has been finalized as part of our 2025 business plan, which is available on our website, on our corporate documents page. If you'd like to have a really deep dive into our business plan, our our goals and objectives for the upcoming year and planned activities, please, we encourage you to have a look. Now, this presentation provides some key financial information, excerpt from the business plan that will provide stakeholders with financial and contextual information to inform your feedback. So just, cutting through all that, there's a little bit more information in this proposal today than is in the original proposal. And what we're sharing today will be posted to the website, both as a recording and as a static document, the presentation slides. Next slide, please. So our process, as required by our legislative framework, we're going to be consulting for 45 days on our program fees, and we must post the final fees for 30 days before they come into effect. So hoping December 1st posting for a Jan 1, 2025 effective date. This consultation launched on September 27th and is running until November 12th. If you have feedback to provide us on the proposal, please send it in to consultations@rpra.ca anytime ahead of the November 12th end date of the consultation. Also, we are open to setting up one-on-one engagements if you wanted to take a deep dive, probe, or anything is unclear, or provide feedback directly to our team. Same thing, please send us a message at consultations@rpra.ca, and we're happy to have that more direct engagement. So as I noted, the webinar recording is going to be posted to our dedicated consultation page, along with all the other program-specific webinar recordings and materials. So have a look if you're interested or if you're involved in more than one program. We are hosting further webinars next week on the Blue Box and HSP programs, ITTAV batteries and lighting programs, and we hosted last week 2 webinars specific to HWP and the excess soil programs. Following the finalization of the fees, we're also going to produce a consultation report, which summarizes all the feedback we received and how we considered it in making the final decision around or making recommendations to the board on our final fees for the upcoming year. So we are hopeful that both the final fees and the consultation report will be available on December 1st, and that will be posted to the consultation page. As well, if you're participating in this webinar, you're going to be notified directly by email of the availability of those materials. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a bit of an enhancement from previous years, just to help our ratepayers and stakeholders of trade associations understand, what these fees pay for. So there are a few kind of core pieces of our mandate that fees support. Those are developing and ongoing maintenance of the registries to support your reporting obligations, operating the registries and support to registrants. So that's that frontline service, whether it's an email or a phone call to a compliance support officer, or any of the training materials that support your use, kind of the on-demand materials or self-serve, materials that are on our website to help you understand your obligations and how to use the registry. Your fees support compliance and enforcement of the resource recovery requirements in Ontario. They also support public reporting of registry data and RPRA's compliance activities. If folks haven't, this is a bit of an enhanced RPRA deliverable. If you haven't had a chance to visit our public reporting pages, I encourage you to visit those and learn more, both about RPRA's activities as well as the performance of the programs. And oversight of the operation of the windups of the legacy program. So that's ongoing, and you'll see in our forecasting in the business plan that we have wound up one, the MHSW program. We continue to wind up the others, and over the next 3 years, we're hoping that all of those will be fully tied up and wound up and terminated by the minister, and then that we'll no longer have to support that function. Now, just one last note, we did undertake a strategic planning exercise over the last year, and we've completed the strategic planning document, which is a kind of a longer view of where we're headed. That strategic plan contains our strategic goals and objectives for the organization, and those strategic goals flow into our business plan, which is kind of a medium-term planning over the next 3-year period. So have a look if you haven't. It's posted to RPRA's website in our corporate documents section. Okay, next slide, please. So I mentioned our strategic goals. We have 5. Some look outward at our registrants and Ontario, or Ontarians, sorry, and some look more inwardly about how we operate. But the goals are that we have accessible registry services that provide value to registrants, effective enforcement that supports waste reduction and a healthy resource recovery sector, trusted and useful public information about resource recovery, waste, and RPRA's activities, a connected culture where employees can grow and do meaningful work, and robust internal systems and processes that remain innovative and adaptable to change. So now dropping it down a level, we're just highlighting some of the key new planned activities for 2025 that some of your fees will be supporting. And I'll highlight just 5 of them or 6 of them. There are a number of other key activities that we plan to deliver in 2025, and they're described in our business plan. But some key activities here: finalizing and implementing a registry service delivery model, including proposed service standards. Improving the efficiency of RPRA's billing and payment process. And we've actually begun that right now, and some registrants may have received an invitation to provide feedback on their current billing and payment experiences, but we're going to be, going past the discovery phase and implementing some of those enhancements in 2025. Establishment of working groups for collaboration with other Canadian producer responsibility regulators. So I'm sure many of your businesses operate across Canada, and we do have other EPR regulators in Quebec, Nova Scotia, Alberta. So we want to make sure that we are in touch with those folks and sharing information about best practices and harmonizing where possible. So that's one of our new planned activities for 25. Developing and implementing new collection and performance-related system guidelines. Developing and launching a new public-facing website about Ontario's circular economy, and developing and implementing audit procedures in consultation with our stakeholders. And those are just some select key new activities. Next slide, please. Now, just to get into how we set our fees, everything is done according to our general fee setting policy. That's provided on our website as well. There are 4 main steps, and we're gonna walk you through those. First is our annual budget setting. So we've completed that step, which is contained. So our 2025 budget is finalized, and it's done through a consultative process with our advisory councils and the ministry throughout the summer as we gather feedback on our goals and objectives for the year or for the business planning period, consulting on our resourcing plan. So what we believe we need in terms of resources to deliver on our mandate. And then we set the budget in the fall through our business plan and post in October. So that's the first driver of our fee setting. And then we allocate those costs to the individual programs. So we have our budget, and then we allocate amongst the 7 or 8 programs that we support based on level of effort and how big those programs are in terms of number of registrants or producers. And then we subtract or add each program's prior year surplus or deficit, and we can get into that in a moment in detail. And then we apply each of the program's fee models. So once there's a cost allocation or sorry, a recovery target for each program, then we need to figure out how to assign fees to each of the registrants or producers. So we've also developed, we acknowledge that this fee setting process is complex, and we wanted to help make it easy and help folks understand, not just during this, one-shot consultation period, but have these fees information available year-round. So we've created a fees webpage, and hopefully it's quite straightforward and will help you in understanding how those fees are set each year and what they pay for. Next page. So our cost allocation methodology distributes our total cost recovery target between programs to fairly recover costs related to each program and avoid registrants for any one program subsidizing one another. RPRA's cost allocation methodology is divided into two overall cost categories: our direct costs and our common costs. So each program, if they incur any direct costs, so costs that are attributable to a specific program, including your registry amortization and interest. So you're up front when we had to build your program's registry, the tires program, that's a direct cost borne by tires registrants. Any registry foundational costs and interest, professional fees. So that's for engaging a consultant related to the tires program, then only the tires program will incur those costs, and certain registry and IT related expenses. So similarly, if we enhanced the registry specific to, or enhance the tires registry, then that would be a cost borne by the tires producers. Now, the second bucket of costs are our common costs, which cannot be attributable to a specific program, as they're either indirect or shared costs. So common costs are divided up amongst programs using key cost drivers such as number of registrants or number of producers. So just some examples of indirect and shared costs. So our indirect costs include board remuneration, non-registry amortization, leadership, and certain administrative salaries and office supplies. Now, shared service costs include staffing and benefits, IT services and support, and software licensing. Now, the last cost that's incurred is a contribution to RPRA's contingency reserve, which is allocated to each program based on the program's share of total budgeted cost recoveries. Now, RPRA, as per our operating agreement with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, is able to maintain a contingency reserve of up to 50% of our annual operating budget. However, that doesn't mean we have to, and we're currently targeting around 38%, maintenance of a 38% contingency reserve in 2025. Next slide, please. So just covering some of the different sources of revenue. So there are three buckets that we can draw from, which are our producer responsibility programs. That's the RSA programs, Blue Box, tires, HSP, batteries, ITTAV, and lighting. Another revenue source is our digital reporting services, the excess soil and hazardous waste programs. And Stacey's going to walk us through the proportion of fees that are drawn from each of these areas. And finally, the Waste Diversion Transition Act programs. So Stewardship Ontario, OES, Ontario Electronic Stewardship, and Ontario Tire Stewardship, who continue to operate, at least in liquidation phase, as they fulfill their final obligations of their wind-up plans. Next slide, please. I haven't been able to look. Do we have any questions, Julia, come in yet and through the Q&A?
No, Stacey was able to answer one question, but at this time we have no open questions.
Okay, thanks. I think I'm going to hand it over to Stacey now, our Manager of Data Analytics, Policy and Research, to lead us through the next slides.
Excuse me, I might have to clear my throat several times when you're all happy that we're not in the same room. Okay, so we're going to take a detailed look at the first three inputs or factors in determining our fees each year from that slide that's Cam showed before. We're going to look at our budget, our cost recovery targets for each of our programs, and the application of surpluses and deficits to each of those programs as applicable. So firstly, our 2025 budget. So you can see on this slide, the bottom line of the table shows the total RPRA budget for 2025 compared to the budget for 2024. And our budget this year is 5% higher than our 2024 budget. This is primarily to increase resources for the service and administration of our registry and for our compliance enforcement activities. And it also represents investments in technology. The 5% increase is in line with what we forecasted in our 2024 business plan as well. Blue box resource requirements, it's worth mentioning, are driving the majority of the increased revenue requirement for producer responsibility programs. So that's the first row there. The total 2025 budgeted revenue requirement for producer responsibility programs, which of course includes tires, is 16.8 million, and that's a 10% increase from 2024. The budgeted requirement for our digital reporting services, our excess soil and hazardous waste registry programs, have increased by 2%. And you can see it on the second line. So the chart we're showing you here compares our 2025 budget to the 2024 budget. And it includes expenses and revenues at the first sort of third of that chart, and then expenses in the middle with totals at the bottom. And the expenses and revenues are further broken down into their components. So the largest increase that you might be able to see right off the bat in individual expense lines between 2024 and 2025 budgets is for salaries and benefits, and also for registry and IT. And that's consistent with RPRA's need to resource the Blue Box facilities portal, which is being built right now and will continue to be built in 2025. And to increase some dedicated human resources for the Blue Box program implementation. It's also to continuously improve technology and to ensure the security and usability of our registry portals for all of our programs. So here we've got our budgeted expenses for 2025. So expenses only, totaling 26.1 million. And this was detailed in the previous slide, but this is obviously a pie chart that's broken down into percentages. So you can see those individual expense lines as percentages now of the total budgeted expenses. So the largest shares are taken up by salaries and benefits and our registry and IT expenses, which also, if you recall, happened to be our biggest increases between 2024 and 2025. And here we have another breakdown. This slide shows our cost allocations per program by percentage. So for those of you who have attended these webinars before, the split in our program cost allocation is not dissimilar to previous years. If you look at the bar on the bottom, you can see that producer responsibility programs, which includes tires, are allocated the majority of the costs. With second at 33% being our digital reporting services, the excess soil registry and hazardous waste registry, and the costs allocated to the oversight of WDTA programs continues to shrink year over year. And as those programs are wound up, that will eventually get down to zero. So if you look at that pie chart, you can see hazardous waste at 30% and Blue Box at 28%. Are the two individual programs that are allocated the greatest share of costs for 2025. And that's largely due to the number of registrants in those programs. They are our biggest programs by far. And also in the case of Blue Box, it's also due to the magnitude of direct costs incurred by that program because of the build of a Blue Box facilities portal that I mentioned. And the fact that that program requires some more dedicated resources due to its complexity. Hazardous and special products, HSP, and tires are fourth and fifth in terms of allocations for 2025, but they have significantly smaller percentages of the total revenue requirement than hazardous waste and Blue Box. Sorry, I guess they're third and fourth, not fourth and fifth. Sorry about that. Next would be electronics with 7%, and then batteries, excess soil, and lighting have small percentages of the costs allocated to them. And again, this is primarily driven because of the size of these programs in terms of the number of registrants in each of them, and subsequently the resources required to deliver them. Okay, so moving on, so we've done our budget. We've talked about how we're proposing to allocate our costs for 2025. And now another factor and input into our determination for fee rates is the application of program surpluses or deficits each year. And those surpluses or deficits occur when the annual revenue for a program exceeds or falls short of that program's overall cost recovery target. They're usually applied to the cost recovery target 2 years after they occur, and they may be applied over the span of 1 or more years. And always our goal in determining how to apply those surpluses and deficits is to minimize annual fee fluctuations for each program. So specific to tires, there is a surplus of 95,000 from 2023 proposed to be applied in 2025 to reduce the overall tires program cost recovery target. If there is indeed determined to be a surplus or deficit in the tires program for this year, then we will consider applying it to the program cost recovery target for tires in 2026. And that amount would be communicated next year in the 2026 fee proposal for consultation that we would release to our website around this time next year. So here you can see the 2024 and 2025 program cost recovery targets by program, including broken out the applications of any surpluses or deficits in 2024 and then in 2025. Tires is highlighted at the top there. You can see there was a surplus applied to the 2024 cost recovery target for tires, and that surplus was from 2022. And again, we're proposing to apply another surplus for 2025, which ultimately will decrease the proposed 2025 tires fee rate, the variable rate. And here is a breakdown of the revenue requirement for tires by cost type. If you recall, Cam went over the types of costs that we bucket: direct, indirect, and shared, which are common costs. And then this chart also breaks out the reserve and startup recovery contributions for the program and any surplus deficit. And again, just as a reminder, direct costs are costs for specific program-specific activities, so activities specific to tires. That could encompass professional fees or fixes or enhancements specific to the tires portal, for example. And indirect and shared costs, common costs, include, among other things, salaries and benefits for compliance officers and registry support officers, which are shared amongst all of our programs. And also, you can see there, the contribution to our operating reserve and the recovery of our startup deficit, which all programs contribute to equally.
Stacey, I think it might be helpful to move back one slide to our surplus and deficits. We've got a question in the chat, and it's directly about surpluses. Maybe one more back to how surpluses and deficits are applied. So the question is, to what costs are the surpluses attributable? Meaning, what expenses did not match up to the 2023 budget? So I think it might be helpful to explain how we get a surplus.
A surplus. So a surplus results when we collect more revenue from fees than we expected to. Revenue that goes over and above the expenses for that program that were budgeted for that year. So I think it's fair to say that our expenses, if there's a surplus, have been covered off all the expenses that we did budget for that year, but then we actually did bring in more money through fees. That could have been because we had more supply reported in that year. That's probably one of the usual reasons that would happen, or more producers potentially, but the supply fluctuations are often the main reason why we would have a surplus or deficit, unless there's unexpected costs that come up for a program that might result in a deficit in a given year. So what expenses did not match up to the 2023 budget? I can't answer that explicitly, but as I'm trying to explain, it's more likely and if you want to actually send this in an email, we can confirm this with our finance department. But it's more likely that our expenses were paid for. We collected enough revenue to pay for the expenses we had budgeted for the tires program in 2023, and then we actually had additional revenue in the program left over, and that's what made up the surplus that we're now proposing to apply to 2025 cost recovery target for tires.
And going the other way, there's a potential scenario that a large producer, say, goes out of business or leaves the market, and those estimated supplies, because we're obviously estimating on previous year rolling last 3 years supply information to make our best estimate of how many producers and how many tires they're anticipated to supply in the upcoming year. So if a large producer exits the market, we might have a deficit, and we'll have to recover that in the following year, or 2 years from now in this case. So if there's a deficit in 24, we'd have to recover it in 26, or choose how to recover it, maybe spread it out over a few years if it's a large deficit. Good question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna skip back to where we were in our deck. So we were discussing the breakdown of the revenue requirement for 2025. So I just wanted to say a couple more things about indirect and shared costs specifically. So those include also for 2025 specifically investments in frontline service and support to ensure compliance, and also the development of a service delivery standard, which Cam mentioned, and the setting up of service level agreements. They also include increased investment in training and development to compliance and frontline staff to support improved service delivery. And again, increased investment in data governance and analytics capabilities at RPRA to improve the sophistication and efficiency of our compliance support and enforcement activities. And again, you can read about all of our planned activities for 2025 in our business plan. Okay, so we're pausing for questions. I believe there's nothing in the chat at the moment, but maybe we'll just pause for a few seconds, see if anything pops up. Otherwise, we'll move on to the rates. Okay, I think I'll just go on. And since this is a bit of a smaller group joining us today than some of our other webinars, we'll continue to keep an eye on the chat, and if there's something we can answer as we go along, we'll do that again. That worked well. Okay, so we're gonna actually look at our proposed fees for 2025 for tires producers. Firstly, some notes on our proposed fee model. So the program fee model for producer responsibility programs in general is unchanged from 2024. And for all those programs, it consists variously of nominal fixed flat fees for small producers. So those are producers that are reporting supply under specific supply thresholds. And it also includes a variable per kilogram, or in the case of tires, a per tire rate for all other producers. And again, this is unchanged, and we're not proposing any changes for the tires model or for any other producer responsibility program fee models for 2025. The proposed fee model is aligned with the government's objectives to hold producers responsible for the products and packaging that they supply into the market when consumers are finished using them. And it also follows our general fee setting principles, which you can find on our website if you're interested. They're outlined in our general fee setting policy, and there are links on that fees webpage to all of these documents. So just a couple of those principles to highlight here: equity, which protects small producers and registrants from excessive burden, ensuring large producers and registrants pay fees that reflect the relative quantity of material they supply into the Ontario marketplace, and ensures that no producers have a competitive advantage on a per product basis. And also simplicity and predictability. Our per kilogram or per tire variable fees are aligned with regulatory requirements for producers to report weights or units, and they also enable revenue estimates based on our estimates of future supply volumes or supplied units. And here is the slide that's showing you our proposed rates for the tires program for 2025. And just to note that the estimated number of reported tires is subject to change at this point before we finalize our fee rates for 2025. And this is consistent with other years. We continue to update our analyses to include late reports and any adjustments that might have occurred between August when we were doing the calculations to produce our fee proposal and November of this year. So here you can see the proposed flat fee for tires is at $90 for 2025, and our per tire fee is proposed at $0.186 per tire. The flat fee rate represents a 5.6% increase, and that's reflective of the overall budget increase from 2024 to 2025. The variable fee rate for large tire producers, that proposed rate is an increase of 9.7% over our 2024 rate. That's driven by two things. One is an estimated 6% decrease in the number of tires we expect to be reported as supplied into the Ontario market in 2025. And also a 5.5% increase in the tires program allocation compared to the allocation from 2024. And just a bit more information on how we actually assign a fee on a given supply report. So it's based on a rolling average of reported tires supplied in 2021, 2022, and 2023. That would be for the 2024 fee rate. So that's the estimate. That's how we came up with our estimate for 2025 fee setting. And the estimate we have at present, which again is subject to change before the finalization of our fees at the end of November. But our estimate right now is 11 million, just over 11.6 million tires. And that again represents a 6% decrease compared to the tire supply estimate that we used for 2024 fee setting, which would have been a rolling average of 2020, 2021, and 2022 supply. A couple more estimates that do go into the fee calculations are the number of producers. So we're looking at 194 small producers and 174 larger producers. And I might just pause there because I do see a few open questions, quite a few open questions.
I can take the first one. The question is, what measurables are used to qualify each program's budget effectiveness in achieving the RRCA and regulation objectives? For example, if producers are not in compliance, is the program considered to be adequately budgeted for? So a few elements to answering that question. First, in terms of our budget's effectiveness, we do have one KPI that measures our budgeting accuracy. So off the top of my head, it's either 5 or 10%, but that's our target. Stacey, you probably know.
It's within 10. I'm not going to say I'm certain either. It's in the business plan.
It's in the business plan, but we do measure the effectiveness of our estimates in setting RPRA's annual budget and our ability to recover revenues within, I believe, 10% of that target. Now, in terms of each individual program's effectiveness, the program performance in terms of achieving targets or meeting requirements, so that is the responsibility of the producers for our RCA programs. Now, in terms of RPRA's ability to support compliance and enforcement, if we feel that we need more resources to deliver on our compliance and enforcement mandate, especially as it pertains to the RCA programs specifically, or a specific producer responsibility program within that bucket of RCA programs, then the registrar, through our business planning process in the summer, will make a case that more resources are required to deliver the mandate, and that will be consulted on with our advisory councils and the ministry, and ultimately approved by our board. So, to answer your question, if there's a need in a specific area for more resources, like in compliance enforcement, then RPRA will increase our budget accordingly. And we've done that in this year for the Blue Box program, acknowledging that the Blue Box is a very large transition from the old model to the new model, requiring support for all parties, whether it's municipalities, pros, and individual producers. So that case is made, and we've got an increase in resources specific to the Blue Box program in the upcoming year. Another question here is about our role. So what does RPRA do in terms of minimizing the environmental effect of tire waste? I'm new to this position and don't understand what RPRA's actual function is. So RPRA is the empowered regulator. So we enforce the Ontario government's the regulations made under the RRCEA. So in this case, under the tires regulation, the producers have responsibilities to set up a collection system that meets the accessibility requirements. And then they have management targets based on the amount of supply. Each producer's supplying number of tires supplied in the province will be assigned a resource recovery target, and really the obligation to meet those targets and minimize the amount of tires that or increase the amount of tires that are diverted from landfill. That is the responsibility of the producers, and RPRA's role is to enforce upon the requirements, make sure that producers and pros are meeting their regulated targets. Hopefully that helps to answer the question. And I encourage, if you'd like to learn more about the TIRES program, to visit our dedicated TIRES program page on the RPRA website.
The next question, I thought it might be useful to just flip to the next slide, because it might help answer it and just explain further the breakdown of our rate change. So as mentioned, we have a 5.5% increase in our program allocation, a 6.2% decrease in the estimated number of tires that we predict to be bringing in fees in 2025. So that has an impact on the fee rate of increasing it by 6.2%. Then we are proposing to apply a surplus, which will decrease that rate by 2.3%. And then there's a slight change in the small producer count for 2025 predicted, which has a very slight increase impact to the fee rate. And then so that comes up with our total increase of 9.7%. So just taking a look again at the question, looking at the 2025 revenue requirement versus 2024 revenue target, the program costs are increasing by approximately 3% net of the 2023 surplus refund. But as a result of lower projected supply, the 2025 fee amounts are increasing by 10%. I mean, yes, I'm not going to try and quickly do the math represented there in my head, but yeah, this is the breakdown. The increase in program allocation and the decrease in the number of tires we expect is having the effect of increasing that rate. It would increase it further if not for the application of a surplus for 2023, which is resulting in about a 10% increase as opposed to a 12% increase or close to without the application of that surplus.
And the next question is very much related, which is, how do we make that estimate? How did we come to the conclusion that we think that there's going to be less tires being supplied into the Ontario marketplace? And it's all based on our historical reported data. Tires, we have the advantage with the TIRES program that it's been operating for a number of years. So we have supply data reported by registrants into our registry, and we use that a 3-year rolling average of historical data, which is showing a trending in decreased number of supplied tires into the marketplace. So we've got our program allocation, and now we're spreading it out over less registrants and less supply, which is causing an increase in the fees. But to the question about have we validated this with the tire industry, we do have our number. I don't know whether it's on the previous slide or the next slide of the total number of tires we anticipate that may be supplied in the entire market. There it is. It's 11 million tires, 11 million and a half tires. So if you have feedback, we encourage you to share it with us, which could help inform our proposal. That's part of one of the main aspects that we're consulting on is do we have this right? Yes, we're using real data reported into the registry, but if you have any supporting information to help us with that estimate, please share it.
One other question in the chat right now. Does your 2025 projected tonnage volume include imported offshore commercial tires? Additionally, how effectively are the monitoring and enforcement measures in place to ensure accurate reporting and fee collection on these offshore imported tires? So our tonnage volume includes anything that would be obligated to be reported to us as supplied into the Ontario market under the tires regulation. I don't know if that includes imported offshore as a large bucket, because I'm not a compliance officer. But if they're obligated under the regulation, this estimate does include them. How effective are our monitoring and enforcement measures to ensure accurate reporting? There's procedures that producers have to follow, as you're probably aware. There's also some verification procedures in place and requirements for tires. And then the rest of it is the work of our compliance officers. I mean, it's our job, and we do inspect and conduct inspections where we see anomalies or reasons to suspect that there is adjustments required to producer supply reports or performance reports. Don't know if you have anything to add to that, Cam.
No, I think if folks do have insights around free rider businesses, that you can always send our compliance enforcement team a message at registry@rpra.ca, and happy to receive that information and look deeper into that. If there are beliefs that there's free riders or folks free riding the system, which means they're supplying tires into the Ontario marketplace but not paying their share of the collection management system, then yeah, that information insight is helpful.
So next question is again just about how we predict tire supply and what exactly is represented in that prediction. So we are predicting based on the rolling 3-year average, again, from 2021, 2022, and 2023. That is the number that you're seeing here, 11.6 million. That's good feedback that perhaps that number is low because the tire supply may be rebounding post-COVID, and it's something we can take into consideration. We usually err on the side of conservativeness when predicting supply for fees because we don't want to go into deficit. That burdens the people who pay the fees. We have to recover that deficit. But that's the exact type of feedback that we're looking for during this consultation. So thanks, and we'll take that back and include it in our deliberations and consideration.
And if our estimates are off and the program incurs a surplus, those funds would be returned to producers in the upcoming year when they're considered to be applied in part or in full to the program's cost allocation. And as those trends change, if it's an uptick, if we feel like coming out of the pandemic that more tires will be supplied, then that will be reflected in our supply reporting and incorporated into future year estimates. So maybe there's a bit of a catch up happening, but that's okay. That would be resolved in future years fee setting.
Next question is, how do these fee changes impact municipalities? I think the short answer is they don't directly. Cam, you can jump in at any time if I'm off track here. But
yeah, I would say that these are fees paid by producer businesses. So in many cases, manufacturers, importers, distributors, or retailers of obligated tires. Municipalities, in some instances play the role of collector and that would be a business relationship between the municipality and a pro or a producer who has obligations to operate the collection system.
Mhm. So, last question in the chat for now. There's another one. Aside from asking the public for information, how much of the budget is used for RPRA to proactively identify free riders or other non-compliance issues? A very large portion of our budget is for the salaries and benefits of our skilled staff, and it's their job to proactively identify free riders and other non-compliance issues. So,
And
there's
our business plan, I believe, does provide a breakdown of
it
headcount by
does.
department.
It
And
does.
what you'll glean from reading the business plan is the majority of RPRA staff belong to the registry and compliance department. So yes, when we say that we're increasing our salaries and benefits, that will have a direct effect on our ability to better resource the compliance enforcement department. And one of their main objectives, amongst other competing objectives, one of the main objectives is bringing free riders into compliance or identifying free riders and helping bring them into compliance.
And part of that is also, if a free rider is not always a business that is knowingly not complying. So I would just add that the efforts of our communications and public affairs department also bring in free riders. So you'll see some headcount there. I don't think there's an additional headcount for 2025, but just to point out that there's our whole organization is focused on supporting compliance with the RRCEA and enforcing compliance with those regulations. So almost everything in our budget touches that strategic goal in one way or another, even the enhancement of technology, also the expansion and enhancement of our data analytics capabilities. That analysis really does help us pinpoint where we're seeing issues that need further investigation. So there's lots and lots that goes on. But yeah, have a look at our business plan, and if you want to talk further about that, please send us an email.
There's one more question. I want to get to it, but I'm going to hand it back over to Julia, who's going to do a quick poll to gather some feedback from our attendees today.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So we're just going to pause before we actually wrap up. So it'll only take a minute or two, and we kind of include this poll in all our sessions to gather feedback to improve our future webinars. So I'm just going to launch it now. And you should see that pop up on your screen. Thank you.
Okay. While folks complete the feedback survey, I'm gonna, being cognizant of time, I'm gonna go through some of these questions, and please keep submitting your questions. We capture them all, and they'll all of those questions and answers will be captured in our consultation report. If we're not able to answer you live here, we'll follow up with you if you did provide your name in the Q&A. So here's the question. Can you please explain again what's driving the 5.5% increase in program allocation? So in short, that the biggest piece of the program allocation is related to the common costs. And as we noted off the top, the driver of our common costs is an increase in investment in salaries and benefits and registry and IT. So that's really what's driving the 5% increase to the TIRES program allocation. And what does that mean for TIRES registrants? Well, it means more compliance and enforcement resources to support the program, more registry support. So frontline folks who are supporting you and understanding your compliance obligations or how to report or any of that direct frontline engagement through email or phone. So that really is what's driving that 5.5% increase. The next question, could you provide more detail on how free riders are being identified and whether these non-reported tires are contributing to the projected 6% decrease in tire supply for 2025? I would say that that's a bit of an out of scope question for the fees consultation. Um, if you do have questions about how our compliance team identifies free riders, Adam, we can have a follow-up with Mary and team to talk about that. But I would note one thing, that free riders doesn't just mean businesses that have not registered and reported with RPRA. A free rider could be someone who maybe submitted a supply report and there's an error in the reporting. That's also a free rider, and that happens too. And throughout the year, as we verify supply and performance data, there are adjustments that happen that impact both the fees we're collecting and also the performance the management targets that are assigned to producers. So that's also to be appreciated. But the other part of the question, is it contributing to the projected 60% decrease in tire supply, like having free riders? I think we can only go make estimates based on the information reported into our registry. And, in future years, if there are more free riders brought into compliance and therefore more anticipated tires to be supplied into the Ontario marketplace, that will impact our future estimates. And thus, how many tires we're able to spread out the program allocation for the tires program. Hopefully that helps answer your question. And Adam, feel free to follow up with myself or Mary if you'd like to talk further.
I can answer that last question there. I'm going to interpret it a little bit. So if we have less tires supplied into the market, are we being charged more per tire? The short answer is yes. Our cost recovery target is through our fee model assigned on a per tire basis. Largely, we also have our flat fee for small producers, but amongst the large tire producers, we'll have that one figure that we need to recover in order to cover our expenses and deliver the program effectively and efficiently in 2025. If there are a lower number of tires, it means the rate per tire is higher. If there are more tires, it means the rate per tire is lower. But that total cost recovery target is going to remain the same. That's how that input works into our fee model.
Good question. So if folks do have any more questions about the proposal or feedback to provide RPRA about our fees for 2025, please share them with us at consultations@rpra.ca. We're asking for feedback on or before November 12th, so please get your questions or comments into us by then. All of the feedback received will be considered in our decision-making process for setting the fees and making recommendations to our board to approve our 2025 program fee rates. And just a reminder that once we have approved the final fees, we're going to produce a consultation report summarizing all the feedback and notifying all of those who participated in our consultation of the posting and availability of the final fees and that consultation report. And we anticipate that we'll be able to share the final fees by December 1st and that they will take effect Jan 1, 2025.
Great. So that's all for our webinar today. So thank you everyone for attending. I've just closed the poll. Thank you so much for your answers there. Again, the presentation and the recording will be posted on the website later today. Again, thank you for joining us and have a great day. Thank you, everyone.